The blood-stained telegram trembled in Hannah Sullivan's hands as she stood before the stagecoach in Willow Creek, Montana Territory, 1872. The harsh April wind whipped at her skirts, but she barely noticed, her attention fixed on the small bundle in her arms, her 3-month-old daughter, Eliza, sleeping peacefully despite the commotion around them. "Madam, we can't wait all day," the stagecoach driver called down impatiently. "Your ticket's only good for today's coach." Hannah clutched Eliza tighter, her wedding ring catching the afternoon sunlight. The gold band felt like a cruel joke now. Just 6 months ago, she'd left Texas as a hopeful bride, traveling to meet her husband-to-be in Montana after a courtship conducted entirely through letters. Edward Blackburn had seemed perfect on paper, a successful business owner seeking a wife, promising comfort and security. The reality had been far different. "I'm not getting on," Hannah said firmly, though her voice quavered. "This is where I'm staying." The driver shrugged, unconcerned with her plight. "Suit yourself, but I ain't refunding your fare." Hannah watched as the stagecoach pulled away, dust billowing in its wake. She was 22 years old, alone with an infant in a town where she knew no one, with barely $10 to her name. Edward had returned her like unwanted merchandise, sending her back to Texas with a terse note claiming she wasn't suitable as a wife, that her constant crying disturbed his sleep, and that he doubted the child was even his. The thought made her chest tighten with anger. How dare he? She'd been faithful, had tried so hard to please him despite his cruel moods and harsh demands. She'd endured the isolated cabin outside of Helena, the bitter cold, his indifference to her pregnancy. And now, after fleeing in the night 3 weeks ago when his rage had finally turned physical, he'd arranged for her return journey like she was nothing more than a parcel. "You look like you could use some help, madam." The deep voice startled her. Hannah turned to find a tall man watching her with concern in his blue-gray eyes. His face was tanned and weathered beneath his wide-brimmed hat, and a star-shaped badge glinted on his leather vest. "I'm fine, thank you," Hannah replied automatically, though nothing could be further from the truth. "Cole Mackenzie," he said, tipping his hat. "Town marshal here in Willow Creek." His gaze moved to the baby in her arms, then back to her face. "Stage is gone, and you're standing here looking mighty lost." Hannah's composure finally cracked. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, hating the tremble in her voice. The man I married sent me back to Texas, but I can't return there. There's nothing for me there anymore." The marshal's expression hardened. "Sent you back with a child," he said. Hannah stopped, embarrassed to repeat Edward's cruel words. "It doesn't matter what he said. I won't go back to him, and I have nowhere else." Cole Mackenzie studied her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted, a decision made. "I know someone who might help. Mrs. Miller runs a boarding house just down the street. She might have a room and maybe work too if you're inclined." "I don't have much money," Hannah admitted. "Let me talk to her." Cole gestured toward the main street. "You can wait at my office if you'd like. Get out of this wind." "It's no place for a little one." Hannah hesitated only briefly before nodding. What choice did she have? The marshal's office was simple but clean, with a desk, a pot-bellied stove radiating welcome heat, and 2 cells at the back, currently empty. Hannah sank gratefully into a chair while Marshal Mackenzie stoked the fire. "How old?" he asked, nodding toward Eliza. 3 months, Hannah replied, adjusting the blanket around her daughter's face. "She's beautiful," he said simply, and the genuine warmth in his voice made Hannah's eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Wait here. I'll go speak with Mrs. Miller." He paused at the door. "I didn't catch your name, madam." "Hannah Sullivan, and this is Eliza." He nodded once. "Sit tight, Mrs. Sullivan. I'll be back soon." When the door closed behind him, Hannah finally allowed herself a moment of weakness. Tears streamed down her face as she held Eliza close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "We'll be all right," she murmured. "Somehow, we'll be all right." 40 minutes later, Marshal Mackenzie returned with news that changed the course of Hannah's life. "Mrs. Miller has a small room available," he explained. "It's not much, but it's clean. She needs help with laundry and cooking. Said she can offer room and board plus $2 a week." "That's very generous," Hannah said, relief washing over her. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a chance to build something new. "There's one condition," Cole added, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Miller is particular about who stays in her establishment. She's concerned about a woman with a child and no husband." Hannah's heart sank. Of course, even here the shame would follow her. "However," Cole continued, "I may have told her that you're my cousin, recently widowed, and that I've asked you to come stay in Willow Creek until you get back on your feet." Hannah stared at him, stunned by this unexpected kindness. "You lied for me." A small smile cracked his serious expression. "Let's call it a creative interpretation of the truth. You needed help, and Mrs. Miller respects me enough not to ask too many questions." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Cole's eyes flicked to Eliza, then back to Hannah. "No woman with a baby should be left stranded with nowhere to go. It's not right." Something in his tone suggested personal experience, but Hannah didn't press. "Thank you," she said simply. "I don't know how to repay such kindness." "No repayment necessary," he said. "Just make a good life here if you can." He picked up her small carpet bag. "Let me show you to Mrs. Miller's place." As they walked the short distance down Willow Creek's dusty Main Street, Hannah felt the weight of curious stares. A small frontier town like this one thrived on gossip, and a new woman with a baby would certainly cause talk. But with Marshal Mackenzie at her side, no one approached or questioned them. Mrs. Miller proved to be a stern-faced woman of about 60, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked Hannah over critically, but said nothing about her rumpled traveling clothes or the dark circles under her eyes. "Your cousin says you're handy with cooking and laundry," she said by way of greeting. "Yes, madam," Hannah replied. "I'm a hard worker. You'll need to be. I run a respectable house, no men in the rooms, no drinking, no coming in after 9 o'clock. Her gaze softened slightly when it fell on Eliza. "The baby can stay, but if she disturbs the other boarders, we'll have to make other arrangements." "She's very good," Hannah assured her. "She rarely cries without reason." Mrs. Miller nodded. "Marshal Mackenzie vouches for you, and that counts for something in this town. Your room is upstairs, last door on the left. There's a washroom at the end of the hall. Breakfast is at 6, dinner at 6. You start work tomorrow morning." "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I'm very grateful." The older woman waved away her thanks. "Don't be grateful yet. Wait until you've seen the piles of laundry." After Mrs. Miller retreated to the kitchen, Cole handed Hannah her bag. "I'll leave you to get settled," he said. "If you need anything, you've done more than enough," Hannah interrupted. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need." He tipped his hat, glanced once more at Eliza, and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Welcome to Willow Creek, Mrs. Sullivan." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, a small table with a lamp, and a rocking chair by the window. It was more than Hannah had dared hope for just hours ago when she'd stood watching the stagecoach drive away. She sat in the rocking chair, cradling Eliza, who had awakened and was blinking up at her with curious eyes. "Well, little one," she whispered, "it seems we've found a place to start over." Her daughter's tiny hand curled around her finger, and Hannah felt a surge of determination. She would make a life here for both of them. Edward Blackburn had rejected them, but she wouldn't let that define their future. For the first time in months, Hannah Sullivan felt something like hope. The next few weeks established a routine for Hannah. She rose before dawn to help prepare breakfast for Mrs. Miller's boarders, 4 men who worked at the sawmill, an elderly schoolteacher, and a young woman who clerked at the general store. After breakfast came the endless laundry, then preparation for the evening meal. The work was hard but honest, and Mrs. Miller, while strict, proved to be fair. Hannah kept Eliza in a basket nearby as she worked, singing softly to her daughter and talking to her constantly. The other boarders seemed charmed by the baby, and even Mrs. Miller occasionally made silly faces at Eliza when she thought no one was watching. Marshal Mackenzie stopped by the boarding house every few days, ostensibly to check on his cousin. He always had a moment to peek at Eliza, marveling at how quickly she was growing. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a carved wooden rattle, a soft blanket, once even a tiny pair of moccasins he'd traded for from a traveling Crow merchant. "You don't need to keep bringing gifts," Hannah told him one evening in late May as they sat on the boarding house porch. The spring air was soft with the scent of new growth, and Eliza was sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I know," Cole replied, leaning back in his chair, "but I want to." Hannah studied him in the fading light. At 32, Cole Mackenzie had the lean, hardened look of a man who'd seen his share of trouble. The small scar bisecting his left eyebrow, and the way his hand sometimes drifted unconsciously to the Colt revolver at his hip spoke of experience with violence. But there was a gentleness in how he spoke to Eliza, a respect in how he treated Hannah that belied the tough exterior. "May I ask you something personal?" Hannah ventured. Cole nodded, his expression curious. "Why did you help us that day? The truth." He was quiet for so long that Hannah thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "My sister was in a similar situation once. Her husband abandoned her and my nephew when the boy was just a baby." His jaw tightened. "No one helped them. She had to make compromises I know she never wanted to make just to survive." "I'm sorry," Hannah said softly. "It was a long time ago." Cole's eyes met hers. "When I saw you standing there with your little girl, looking like the world had just collapsed around you, I couldn't walk away." "What happened to your sister and nephew?" A shadow crossed his face. "Influenza took them both, winter of '65. I was away fighting in the war. By the time I got back." He shook his head. "Anyway, that's why." Hannah reached over impulsively and touched his hand. "Thank you for telling me." His fingers briefly curled around hers before he pulled away, standing up. "It's getting late. I should let you both get some rest." As Hannah watched him walk down the street, she realized that Cole Mackenzie had somehow become important to her, more important than she was ready to admit, even to herself. 2 days later, Hannah was hanging laundry in the yard behind the boarding house when Mrs. Miller came hurrying out, her usually composed face tight with concern. "Hannah, there's a man asking for you at the front door," she said in a low voice. "Says he's your husband." The sheet Hannah was hanging slipped from her numb fingers. "Edward, here, he seems agitated," Mrs. Miller said carefully. "I told him to wait while I fetched you, but I think perhaps we should send for the marshal." Hannah's heart hammered in her chest. "Yes, please." "And Mrs. Miller, could you take Eliza upstairs? I don't want him near her." The older woman nodded, scooping up the baby from her basket. "Be careful, child. I don't like the look of him." Hannah smoothed her apron with trembling hands and made her way to the front of the house. Edward Blackburn stood in the entry hall, hat in hand, his face flushed with what could have been travel or anger. He looked thinner than she remembered, his once handsome features sharpened by discontent. "Hannah," he said, his voice carrying the familiar undercurrent of contempt. I've come to take you home." "This is my home now," she replied, proud that her voice remained steady despite her fear. Edward's mouth twisted. "Don't be ridiculous. You're my wife. The child is mine. You both belong with me." "You sent us away," Hannah reminded him. "You said I wasn't suitable as a wife. You questioned whether Eliza was even yours." "I was hasty," he admitted, though there was no true remorse in his tone. "A man has a right to expect certain things from his wife, and you were emotional, difficult, but I've decided to give you another chance." "How generous," Hannah said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "But I'm not coming back." Edward's face darkened. "You have no choice. The law is on my side. A wife belongs with her husband." "And a child belongs with a father who loves her," Hannah countered. "You've shown no love for either of us." He took a step toward her, and Hannah instinctively backed away. "I won't leave without you and the baby," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Don't make this difficult, Hannah. Is there a problem here?" Cole's voice from the doorway sent a wave of relief through Hannah. He stood with his hand resting casually on his gun belt, his expression carefully neutral as he assessed the situation. Edward turned, irritation flashing across his face. "This is a private matter between a man and his wife, Marshal. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave us to sort it out." "Mrs. Sullivan," Cole said, deliberately using Hannah's maiden name, "would you like this man to leave?" "Yes," Hannah said firmly. "I don't want to speak with him anymore." Edward's face flushed with anger. "Her name is Mrs. Blackburn, and she has no right to dismiss me. I'm her husband." "Former husband," Hannah corrected, drawing strength from Cole's presence. "I left you because you were cruel and dangerous. I won't return. You can't just decide that." Edward snapped. "Actually, she can," Cole said mildly. "Montana territory has some progressive views on these matters. A woman can leave an abusive husband, and the courts will support her decision." "Abusive?" Edward scoffed. "She's exaggerating. Women often do." Cole's expression hardened. "Mr. Blackburn, I'm going to have to ask you to leave town. Today." "On what grounds?" Edward demanded. "Disturbing the peace would do for a start," Cole replied. "Or I could look more closely into why a man would send his wife and infant child away on a stagecoach with barely enough money for food." Edward's face paled slightly. "You have no right to interfere in my family matters." "When you bring your family matters to my town and cause distress to its citizens, it becomes my concern." Cole's hand still rested on his gun belt, a subtle reminder of his authority. "Now, you have a choice. You can leave Willow Creek peacefully, or you can spend the night in my jail before being escorted to the territorial line tomorrow." For a tense moment, Hannah thought Edward might choose confrontation. His hands clenched into fists, and hatred blazed in his eyes as he looked from Cole to her. Then, abruptly, the fight seemed to drain out of him. "This isn't over," he said to Hannah. "The law gives a man rights over his wife and child. I'll be back with papers from a judge." "I look forward to reviewing those papers," Cole said evenly. "Until then, goodbye, Mr. Blackburn." After Edward stalked out, slamming the door behind him, Hannah's legs finally gave way. She sank onto the hallway bench, trembling. Cole sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Are you all right?" Hannah nodded, though she felt far from all right. "Do you think he'll come back?" "Eventually," Cole admitted. "Men like that don't give up easily, but we'll be ready when he does." Hannah looked up at him. "You're not alone in this," Cole said simply. "Not anymore." Mrs. Miller appeared at the top of the stairs, Eliza in her arms. "Is that dreadful man gone?" "Yes, for now," Cole confirmed. "Good riddance," the older woman huffed, bringing Eliza down to Hannah. "Anyone who would abandon his child doesn't deserve to call himself a father." Hannah hugged Eliza close, drawing comfort from her daughter's solid warmth. "Thank you both. I don't know what I would have done if." But you didn't have to face him alone, Cole interrupted gently. And you won't have to in the future either. The promise in his words gave Hannah strength, even as she wondered what Edward might do next. That night, after Eliza was asleep, Hannah sat by the window of her small room, watching the quiet street below. She couldn't shake the feeling that Edward's appearance had changed something fundamental. The fragile security she'd begun to build in Willow Creek suddenly seemed threatened. A soft knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Mrs. Miller holding a steaming cup of tea. "Thought you might need this," the older woman said, pressing the cup into Hannah's hands. "Chamomile with a touch of honey." "Thank you," Hannah said, touched by the gesture. Mrs. Miller hesitated, then asked, "May I come in for a moment?" Hannah nodded, surprised. In the weeks she'd been at the boarding house, Mrs. Miller had never entered her room. The older woman settled into the rocking chair, her sharp eyes taking in Eliza sleeping peacefully in her makeshift crib, a drawer lined with blankets. "That man today," she said without preamble, "he's not a good person." "No," Hannah agreed quietly, "he's not. I've seen his kind before. They believe they own their wives the way they own their horses or cattle." Mrs. Miller's mouth set in a hard line. "My first husband was such a man." Hannah looked up in surprise. Mrs. Miller never spoke of her past. "I was 16 when I married him," the older woman continued. "By 18, I had buried our first child, a little boy who lived only 3 days. My husband blamed me for the baby's death, said I was too weak to bear a proper son." Her voice remained steady, but Hannah could see old pain in her eyes. "He beat me so badly after that I lost the second baby before it even had a chance." "I'm so sorry," Hannah whispered. Mrs. Miller waved away her sympathy. "It was a long time ago. The point is, I understand what you're running from. And I want you to know that you have friends here who will help you stand against him." "I'm afraid," Hannah admitted. "Not just for myself, but for Eliza. What if he takes her from me?" "That won't happen," Mrs. Miller said firmly. "Marshal Mackenzie won't allow it." "He's been very kind, but kind," Mrs. Miller interrupted with a snort. "My dear, that man looks at you and your daughter like you're the sunrise after the longest night of winter. He'd move mountains to keep you safe." Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We barely know each other." "Sometimes knowing comes quick," Mrs. Miller said, rising from the chair. "My second husband, a good, gentle man, proposed to me after knowing me just 2 weeks. We had 30 happy years together before he passed." She patted Hannah's hand. "All I'm saying is, you're not as alone as you think." After Mrs. Miller left, Hannah sipped her tea and considered the older woman's words. Was it possible that Cole Mackenzie felt something beyond simple kindness toward her and Eliza? And if he did, what did she feel in return? The answer came more easily than she expected. In the short time she'd known him, Cole had shown her more consideration and respect than Edward had in their entire relationship. He made her feel safe, valued. When he smiled at her, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his serious face, something inside her responded with a warmth she'd almost forgotten she could feel. But Hannah was still legally married to Edward, with all the complications that entailed. And she'd made one disastrous choice in a husband already. Could she trust her judgment again so soon? These thoughts followed her into uneasy dreams, where Edward pursued her through endless twisting corridors, always just a step behind. June brought scorching heat to Willow Creek. The laundry dried quickly in the hot sun, but hanging it became a test of endurance as temperatures soared. Hannah developed a routine of working early in the morning and late in the evening, with Eliza napping during the worst of the midday heat. Cole continued his regular visits, though Hannah noticed he was more reserved since Edward's appearance. He spoke mainly of town business or asked about Eliza, avoiding personal topics or lingering too long. Hannah found herself missing their earlier, more relaxed conversations, but she understood his caution. The last thing either of them needed was to give Edward ammunition for accusations of impropriety. Nearly 3 weeks after Edward's visit, Hannah was shopping at the general store when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Blackburn's back in town," a man was saying to the shopkeeper. "Saw him getting a room at the hotel. Had some official-looking papers with him." Hannah abandoned her half-filled basket and hurried back to the boarding house, clutching Eliza tightly against her chest. Mrs. Miller took one look at her pale face and immediately sent one of the boarders to fetch Marshal Mackenzie. Cole arrived within minutes, his expression grim. "I heard," he said without preamble. "He's got a court order from a judge in Helena claiming rights to take you and Eliza back." "Can he do that?" Hannah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The law generally sides with husbands in these matters," Cole admitted reluctantly. "But that doesn't mean we're without options." "What options?" Hannah's voice rose with panic. "I won't go back to him, Cole, I can't, and I won't let him take Eliza." "Listen to me," Cole said, taking her gently by the shoulders. "I won't let that happen. Do you trust me?" Hannah looked into his eyes and saw the determination there. "Yes," she said simply. "I trust you." Cole nodded once. "Good. Then here's what we're going to do." An hour later, Hannah sat at the small table in her room, pen poised over paper, trying to find the right words. Cole's plan was risky, but it offered the best chance of keeping Eliza safe from Edward's influence. The letter was difficult to write, laying out as it did the worst moments of her brief marriage. She detailed Edward's verbal abuse, his indifference during her pregnancy, the night he'd struck her when she'd asked for money to buy warmer clothes for the baby. She wrote about waking to find him standing over Eliza's cradle, complaining that her crying kept him awake, suggesting they might leave her outside until she learned to be quiet. Hannah's hand shook as she wrote, but she forced herself to continue to put down every cruel word, every frightening moment. When she was finished, she signed her name and added the date. A knock at the door announced Cole's return. He was accompanied by Judge William Parker, a dignified older man with silver hair and kind eyes, who served as the circuit judge for this part of Montana territory. "Mrs. Sullivan," the judge greeted her formally, "Marshal Mackenzie has explained your situation." "I understand you have a statement for me." Hannah handed him the letter, suddenly nervous. "Yes, sir. Everything I've written is the truth." The judge read through her account carefully, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When he finished, he looked up at her with compassion. "This is a very serious document, young lady. Are you prepared to swear to its contents under oath?" "I am," Hannah said firmly. "Very well." The judge produced a Bible from his coat pocket. "Place your hand on this Bible and repeat after me. I, Hannah Sullivan, do solemnly swear that the statement I have provided is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God." Hannah repeated the words, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The judge nodded gravely and took back the Bible. "Marshal Mackenzie tells me you wish to file for divorce on grounds of cruelty and abandonment." "Yes, sir." Hannah had never imagined herself as a divorced woman. The stigma was considerable, especially for a woman, but she saw no other way to free herself and Eliza from Edward's control. "Normally, such proceedings take time," Judge Parker explained. "However, given the circumstances and the nature of your allegations, particularly those concerning potential harm to the infant, I'm inclined to issue a temporary order of protection immediately. This would prevent Mr. Blackburn from approaching either you or the child until a formal hearing can be arranged." Relief washed over Hannah. "Thank you, Judge Parker." "Don't thank me yet," the judge cautioned. "Mr. Blackburn will still have the opportunity to contest your allegations. And he does have a court order from Judge Hamilton in Helena, who apparently heard only his side of the story." "What happens now?" Hannah asked. "Now," Cole said, "we deliver the news to Mr. Blackburn that his plans have changed." Judge Parker held up a hand. "Let me handle this part, Marshal. It will carry more weight coming from me, and we need to do this by the book." He turned to Hannah. "Mrs. Sullivan, it would be best if you and your daughter remain here with Mrs. Miller. Mr. Blackburn is likely to be displeased." After the judge left, Cole lingered, his expression troubled. "I should go with him," he said. "Blackburn won't take this well." "Be careful," Hannah urged. "Edward has a terrible temper." "I've handled worse," Cole assured her with a slight smile. "Lock your door and don't open it for anyone but me or Mrs. Miller." After he left, Hannah did as instructed, then sat by the window, Eliza sleeping in her arms, watching and waiting. Nearly 2 hours passed before she heard the commotion downstairs, raised voices, then the sound of the front door slamming. Moments later, a soft knock came at her door. "It's me," Cole called quietly. Hannah unlocked the door to find him looking weary but satisfied. "What happened?" "About what you'd expect," Cole replied, stepping into the room. "Blackburn ranted and threatened, accused you of all manner of things, but Judge Parker stood firm. The protection order is in place and preliminary divorce proceedings have been initiated." "And Edward, where is he now?" "At the hotel, under orders not to come within 100 yards of you or Eliza. I've got 2 deputies watching him in shifts." Cole sat heavily in the rocking chair. "He's furious, Hannah. This isn't over." "I know," she said softly, glancing down at Eliza, "but it's a start." Cole leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "There's something else we need to discuss. Judge Parker will hold a formal hearing in 3 weeks' time. Edward will bring witnesses, character witnesses, most likely, to speak to his standing and reputation. We need to do the same for you." "But I don't know anyone here, not really, except you and Mrs. Miller." "That's 2 more than none," Cole pointed out. "And Mrs. Miller is highly respected in this town. Her testimony will carry weight." "And you," Hannah asked hesitantly, "will your testimony help or will it seem biased?" Cole met her gaze steadily. "People in town have noticed my interest in you and Eliza. Some talk is inevitable, but my reputation as marshal stands for something. When I speak in that courtroom, Judge Parker will listen." Hannah nodded, understanding what remained unspoken between them. Any personal feelings Cole might have for her could complicate matters, could be used by Edward to suggest impropriety. And yet, those same feelings were what had driven him to help her, to find a way to protect her and Eliza. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Cole stood and moved toward the door. "Try to get some rest. I'll stop by in the morning to check on you both." After he left, Hannah realized that for the first time since Edward had reappeared, she felt something like hope. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now there was a path. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Hannah continued her work at the boarding house, but always with the knowledge that Edward was nearby, watching and waiting for his opportunity. Cole arranged for one of his deputies to escort her whenever she needed to leave the boarding house, and Mrs. Miller never left Eliza alone, even for a moment. Despite these precautions, Hannah occasionally caught glimpses of Edward in town standing outside the general store, watching from across the street as she hung laundry, once even sitting in a pew behind her at Sunday services. Each sighting left her shaken, but she refused to hide away entirely. This was her home now, and she wouldn't let him drive her from it. Cole visited daily, sometimes bringing small gifts for Eliza, sometimes just sitting quietly with Hannah on the porch after dinner. They rarely spoke of personal matters, keeping their conversations light and general. But Hannah found herself increasingly aware of him, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how gentle his large hands were when he held Eliza, the protective stance he unconsciously adopted whenever Edward was mentioned. One evening, a week before the hearing, Cole arrived later than usual. Hannah was already in her room preparing Eliza for bed when Mrs. Miller knocked to announce his visit. "He seems troubled," the older woman whispered. "Says it's important." Hannah found Cole pacing the small parlor, his expression grave. "What's happened?" she asked, immediately fearing the worst. "Edward Blackburn has been building his case," Cole said without preamble. "He's brought in 3 men from Helena who claim to be friends of his, all prepared to testify to his good character and your—" He hesitated. "My what?" Hannah prompted, though she could guess. "Your alleged instability," Cole finished reluctantly. "They're saying you were emotional, irrational, that you fled in the night for no reason, taking his child." Hannah's hands clenched into fists. "That's not true. You know it's not true." "I know," Cole assured her, "but Judge Parker will have to consider their testimony alongside yours. And 3 witnesses against 1 doesn't look good. So what do we do?" Cole took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about this for days, trying to find another solution, but I keep coming back to the same answer." He met her gaze directly. "Marry me." Hannah stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "What? Hear me out," Cole said quickly. "If we were married, Edward's claim on you would be invalidated. He'd have no legal right to force you to return to him. And as Eliza's stepfather, I could adopt her, giving her my protection as well. But I'm still married to Edward," Hannah protested. "Judge Parker can grant an immediate divorce on grounds of abandonment and cruelty, then perform the new marriage ceremony," Cole explained. "It's unusual, but not unheard of in circumstances like these." Hannah sank onto the sofa, trying to process what he was suggesting. "You would marry me." "To protect us from Edward," Cole knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "That would be reason enough," he said softly. "But it's not the only reason, Hannah." Her heart quickened at the look in his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that from the moment I saw you standing alone with Eliza outside that stagecoach, something in me recognized you," Cole said, his voice low and intense. "I've spent weeks telling myself it was too soon, that you needed time, that I shouldn't complicate your situation. But the truth is, I can't imagine my life without you and Eliza in it anymore." "Cole," Hannah whispered, tears blurring her vision. "I'm not proposing a marriage of convenience," he continued earnestly. "I'm asking for a real marriage in time when you're ready. I love Eliza as if she were my own, and I care for you, Hannah, more than I thought possible after knowing someone such a short time." Hannah looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and warmth. This was not Edward's calculated courtship, designed to secure a wife who would serve his needs. This was a man offering partnership, protection, respect, and perhaps, in time, love. "I care for you too," she admitted softly. "But this is so sudden. Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything," Cole replied. "But I understand if you need time to consider. It's a big decision." Hannah thought of Edward, of the court hearing, of the possibility that she might lose Eliza. Then she thought of Cole, his kindness, his gentle strength, the way Eliza's face lit up whenever he entered a room. "I don't need time," she said finally. "Yes, I'll marry you." Cole's face broke into a smile that transformed his serious features. For a moment, Hannah thought he might kiss her, but he simply squeezed her hands. "I'll speak with Judge Parker first thing tomorrow." 2 days later, in Judge Parker's chambers, Hannah stood before the man who had become her champion and listened as he officially dissolved her marriage to Edward Blackburn on grounds of cruelty, abandonment, and failure to provide. The procedure was brief but formal, with Mrs. Miller serving as witness. "Mr. Blackburn has been informed of these proceedings," Judge Parker explained as he signed the final document. "He is, naturally, displeased and has threatened to contest the divorce. However, given the evidence presented and the testimony of respected citizens, I am satisfied that this dissolution is both legal and necessary." "Thank you, Your Honor," Hannah said, feeling as though a great weight had lifted from her shoulders. "Now," the judge continued, checking his pocket watch, "I understand there is to be a wedding." Hannah nodded, suddenly nervous. Was she making another mistake? But no, Cole was nothing like Edward. She'd seen his true character over these past months, had witnessed his patience, his integrity, his kindness. Mrs. Miller squeezed her arm reassuringly. "He's a good man," she whispered. "The best in this town." At precisely noon, Cole arrived, freshly shaved and wearing a clean black suit that Hannah had never seen before. His eyes found hers immediately, warm with promise. "Are you certain?" he asked softly as they stood before the judge, Eliza sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Miller's arms. "Yes," Hannah replied, and was surprised to realize how completely she meant it. The ceremony was simple and brief. They exchanged vows, promising to honor and cherish each other. When Judge Parker pronounced them husband and wife, Cole gently lifted Hannah's hand and placed a kiss on her knuckles, a gesture so tender it brought tears to her eyes. "Well, that's that," Mrs. Miller announced practically, handing Eliza back to Hannah. "Now let's get home before that no-good former husband of yours hears about this and causes a scene." They left the courthouse through a back entrance, avoiding the main street where Edward might be watching. Cole led them to a modest house at the edge of town, one Hannah had passed many times but never entered. "Welcome home," he said, opening the door for her. Hannah stepped inside, surprised by what she found. The house was small but neat, with simple, sturdy furniture and large windows that filled the main room with light. Someone Mrs. Miller, Hannah suspected, had placed vases of wildflowers on the table and mantel. "It's not much," Cole said, suddenly looking uncertain. "But there's a good-sized bedroom for us and a smaller room that could be fixed up for Eliza when she's older." "It's perfect," Hannah assured him, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Truly." Cole showed her around the house, pointing out the kitchen with its cast iron stove, the small garden out back where he'd planted vegetables, the workshop where he did carpentry in his spare time. Hannah was surprised by this glimpse into his private life. The Marshal had hidden depths she was only beginning to discover. "I had Mrs. Miller bring your things over this morning," Cole explained as they entered the bedroom. Hannah's few possessions had been arranged carefully, her dress hanging in the wardrobe, her hairbrush on the dresser, Eliza's makeshift crib set up near the bed. "This is really happening, isn't it?" Hannah said softly, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. "We're married." Cole came to stand before her, his expression serious. "We are. But Hannah, I want you to know I meant what I said before. This is your home now, yours and Eliza's, no matter what, but I don't expect. That is, I understand if you need time before we truly become husband and wife in all ways." Hannah felt a rush of gratitude for his consideration. Edward had never once concerned himself with her comfort or readiness. "Thank you," she said simply. Cole nodded, then smiled. "Are you hungry? Mrs. Miller sent over a basket with enough food for 3 days by the look of it." The rest of the day passed in a quiet domesticity that felt both strange and comforting. They ate dinner together, speaking of ordinary things: Cole's work as marshal, Hannah's plans to plant flowers alongside his vegetables, Eliza's growing attempts to roll over. After dinner, Cole insisted on washing the dishes while Hannah fed and changed Eliza. As night fell, Hannah found herself growing increasingly nervous. Cole must have sensed her anxiety, for he made a show of checking the doors and windows, then announced that he would sleep in the small room off the kitchen. "You and Eliza take the bedroom," he said firmly. "Get settled in, get comfortable. There's no rush, Hannah." She wanted to protest, to assure him that she wasn't afraid, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply nodded. "Good night, Cole." "Good night, Mrs. Mackenzie," he replied with a small smile that warmed her heart. In the bedroom, Hannah prepared for sleep, her mind swirling with the day's events. Mrs. Mackenzie. She was Hannah Mackenzie now, no longer bound to Edward or his cruelty. She and Eliza were safe, protected by a man who had asked for nothing in return except the chance to care for them. As she lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to Eliza's soft breathing, Hannah found herself wondering what the future might hold. Could this hasty marriage, born of necessity, grow into something real and lasting? Cole clearly hoped so. And Hannah admitted to herself, so did she. The next morning, Hannah woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She dressed quickly, secured Eliza in her arms, and made her way to the kitchen to find Cole at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes. "Good morning," he greeted her with a smile. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected," Hannah admitted. "You're cooking. Don't look so surprised," Cole chuckled. "I've been taking care of myself for years. I'm not helpless in a kitchen." Hannah settled Eliza in a padded basket on the table and accepted the cup of coffee Cole offered. "I'm learning all sorts of things about you, Marshal Mackenzie." "I hope that's a good thing, Mrs. Mackenzie," he replied, his eyes warm as they met hers. The day passed pleasantly as they established a routine. Cole went to his office for a few hours while Hannah explored the house more thoroughly, making mental notes of things she might change or improve. When he returned for the midday meal, he brought news. "Edward's been making a fuss at the hotel," he reported as they ate. "Apparently, he's furious about the divorce and is threatening to appeal to a higher court." Hannah's appetite vanished. "Can he do that?" "He can try," Cole said calmly. "But Judge Parker's decision is solid and our marriage further complicates his claim. Besides, I had a telegram from the sheriff in Helena this morning. It seems Blackburn has some outstanding debts there that he's been avoiding. He may find himself with more pressing concerns than pursuing you." "I hope you're right," Hannah said, though she couldn't quite shake her unease. Edward was not a man who accepted defeat easily. Her fears proved justified that very evening. They were sitting on the front porch after dinner, enjoying the cool evening air, when Edward appeared at the gate. His face was flushed with either drink or anger, and he swayed slightly as he stood glaring at them. Cole was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between Edward and Hannah. "Blackburn," he said evenly, "you're violating the protection order. Turn around and leave or I'll arrest you." "That's my wife," Edward slurred, pointing at Hannah. "And my child. You've stolen them." "Your former wife," Cole corrected him. "The divorce is legal and binding. Hannah is my wife now." Edward's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this." "A few weeks of marriage doesn't erase years of commitment. 6 months is hardly years," Hannah said, finding her voice. "And what commitment did you show when you sent us away? When you questioned whether Eliza was even yours?" "I made a mistake," Edward insisted, his tone suddenly pleading. "I was under stress, not thinking clearly. Hannah, please, we can start over." "It's too late for that," Hannah replied firmly. "Please leave, Edward. There's nothing for you here." For a moment, something dangerous flashed in Edward's eyes, and Hannah feared he might try to force his way onto the property. But Cole's hand moved to his gun belt, a silent warning. "This isn't over," Edward snarled, backing away. No backwater marshal is going to steal my family. I'll be back with proper authorities. You do that, Cole replied calmly. In the meantime, stay away from my wife and daughter or you'll find yourself in a cell. After Edward had staggered away, Hannah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He won't give up, will he? Eventually, he will, Cole assured her, sitting beside her again. Men like that always find easier targets once they realize they can't win. Hannah nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. He called Eliza his daughter. He never did that before, never showed any interest in her at all. It's not about Eliza, Cole said gently. It's about control. You defied him by leaving, and he can't accept that. They sat in silence for a while, watching as darkness settled over Willow Creek. Finally, Hannah spoke again. You called Eliza your daughter, too. Cole looked at her, his expression serious. I meant it. If you're agreeable, I'd like to legally adopt her, make her a Mackenzie in name as well as in my heart. Hannah felt tears spring to her eyes. You would do that? Hannah, Cole said softly, taking her hand. In the short time I've known her, that little girl has become as precious to me as if she were my own flesh and blood. I want to be her father in every way that matters. Hannah looked at their joined hands as large and calloused from work, hers smaller but equally hardened by labor. I would like that very much, she whispered. Later that night, as Hannah prepared for bed, she made a decision. Instead of calling goodnight to Cole through the closed bedroom door as she had the previous evening, she went to find him. He was in the small sitting room, reading by lamplight, and looked up in surprise when she entered. I've been thinking, Hannah said, summoning her courage. This arrangement, you sleeping in the other room, it isn't fair to you. This is your home, your bed. Cole set aside his book. I told you there's no rush. I want you to be comfortable. I know, Hannah said softly, and that consideration means more to me than I can say. But Cole, we're married now. I would like to try to be a real wife to you. Cole studied her face carefully. Are you certain? I don't want you to feel obligated. I'm certain, Hannah replied, extending her hand to him. Come to bed, husband. In the soft lamplight of the bedroom, Cole was gentle and patient, giving Hannah time to adjust to each new sensation. His touches were reverent, his kisses tender, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, Hannah found healing in his embrace. This was nothing like her experiences with Edward, where she had felt used and diminished. With Cole, she felt cherished, respected, desired for herself. Afterward, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Eliza sleeping peacefully nearby, Hannah rested her head on Cole's chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. Are you all right? He murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Yes, Hannah answered truthfully. More than all right. Cole pressed a kiss to her forehead. I know this isn't how either of us imagined finding a spouse, but Hannah, I want you to know I consider myself the luckiest man in Montana territory tonight. Hannah smiled against his skin. Even though you married a woman with another man's child and a host of complications, especially because of that, Cole replied, his voice vibrating beneath her ear. Eliza is a blessing, not a complication, and as for the rest, we'll face it together. As Hannah drifted toward sleep in her husband's arms, she allowed herself to believe, truly believe, that happiness might be possible after all. The next few days established a new rhythm to their life together. Cole left for his duties as marshal each morning after breakfast, returning home for the midday meal when possible. Hannah settled into keeping house, discovering that Cole was remarkably undemanding compared to the exacting standards Edward had imposed. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch or in the small sitting room, talking of their days or simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. Word of their marriage spread quickly through Willow Creek. Most of the townspeople seemed unsurprised apparently. Cole's interest in Hannah and Eliza had been obvious to everyone but Hannah herself. A few of the town's more gossipy residents raised eyebrows at the speed of the union, but Mrs. Miller shut down such talk with her usual brisk efficiency. Better a hasty marriage to a good man than a prolonged one to a scoundrel. Hannah overheard her telling a particularly inquisitive customer at the general store. Edward remained in town, though he kept his distance after Cole threatened to arrest him for violating the protection order. Occasionally, Hannah would catch sight of him watching the house from a distance, but he made no further attempts to approach her directly. On Sunday, Hannah attended church services with Cole for the first time as his wife. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness as they walked down the center aisle together, Cole carrying Eliza with natural ease. The minister welcomed them warmly, making a point of addressing Hannah as Mrs. Mackenzie, which earned a dark look from Edward, seated near the back. After the service, several of the townspeople came to offer congratulations and meet the Marshal's new family properly. Hannah was touched by their kindness, particularly when Mrs. Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife, invited her to join the ladies' sewing circle. "We meet on Wednesday afternoons," she explained. "Nothing fancy, just a chance for the women to talk without men underfoot." She smiled at Cole. "No offense, Marshal." "None taken," Cole replied good-naturedly. "Hannah could use some friends her own age." As they walked home, Hannah felt a new sense of belonging. Willow Creek was becoming her home, not just a place of refuge. "Everyone's been so kind," she remarked. "They're good people," Cole agreed. "And they respect you for how you've handled yourself through all this." Hannah glanced at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Word gets around in a small town," Cole explained. "They know some of what you've been through with Blackburn, and they've seen how you've carried yourself with dignity despite it all. That earns respect." Hannah considered this as they continued walking. She'd been so focused on survival, on protecting Eliza, that she hadn't given much thought to how others might view her actions. It was comforting to know that the community supported her. Later that week, Hannah attended the sewing circle and found herself welcomed into the small group of women. As they worked on their various projects, Hannah mending one of Cole's shirts, conversation flowed easily from town gossip to recipes to advice on Eliza's teething troubles. "Marshal Mackenzie looks 10 years younger since you came to town," Mrs. Peterson remarked with a knowing smile. "He was always so serious before." "He still is most of the time," Hannah replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "Ah, but he smiles now," Mrs. Miller pointed out. "Used to be you could count his smiles per month on one hand." The other women laughed, and Hannah found herself joining in, enjoying the easy camaraderie. These women accepted her unusual circumstances, and offered friendship without judgment. On her way home, basket of mending in one arm and Eliza in the other, Hannah was so lost in pleasant thoughts that she didn't notice Edward until he stepped out from between two buildings, blocking her path. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. Hannah clutched Eliza tighter. "There's nothing to discuss, Edward. Please step aside." "I'm leaving town tomorrow," he continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Going back to Helena to settle some business matters. But I'll return, Hannah. This isn't over." "It is over," Hannah insisted, trying to keep her voice steady. "The divorce is final. I'm married to Cole now." Edward's mouth twisted bitterly. "A convenient arrangement, wasn't it? How long were you planning it? Were you already intimate with him while we were married?" "That's not true, and you know it," Hannah said, anger flaring. "You sent us away, Edward. You questioned whether Eliza was even yours. You have no right to make accusations now." "I made a mistake," Edward said, his voice dropping to the persuasive tone he'd used during their courtship. "I was under pressure with the business, not thinking clearly. But I've had time to reflect, Hannah. I still care for you and the child." "Her name is Eliza," Hannah said coldly. "And you never cared for either of us. You wanted a housekeeper and someone to warm your bed, not a wife and certainly not a daughter." Edward's face hardened. "You've become quite bold, haven't you? Is that his influence?" "Your precious Marshal, it's my influence," Hannah replied. "I've learned my own worth, Edward. Now please step aside and let me pass." For a tense moment, Hannah thought he might refuse. His eyes darted to Eliza, then back to Hannah's face. Finally, he moved aside. "This isn't finished," he said as she passed. "A man has rights." Hannah didn't respond, keeping her pace steady until she rounded the corner. Only then did she allow herself to tremble, leaning against a building for support. "Mrs. Mackenzie, are you all right?" Hannah looked up to find Deputy Wilson, one of Cole's men, watching her with concern. "Yes, thank you," she managed. I had an encounter with Mr. Blackburn." The deputy's expression darkened. "Did he threaten you, madam?" "Not explicitly," Hannah admitted, "but he made it clear he doesn't accept the divorce." "I'll escort you home," Deputy Wilson offered, "and I'll inform the marshal about this incident." By the time Cole returned home that evening, Hannah had regained her composure, but she could see the worry in his eyes as he entered the house. "Wilson told me what happened," he said, hanging his hat by the door. "Are you all right? Did Blackburn say anything specific?" Hannah recounted the conversation as they sat at the dinner table. "He said he's leaving town tomorrow, but that he'll be back." Cole's expression was grim. "I'll have him watched until he's on the stagecoach. After that." He sighed. "We'll need to be vigilant, Hannah. Men like Blackburn, they can nurse a grudge for years." "I know," Hannah said quietly. "I'm sorry to bring this trouble into your life." Cole reached across the table and took her hand. "Don't ever apologize for that. You and Eliza are the best things that have ever happened to me. Any trouble that comes with you is a small price to pay." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes at the sincerity in his voice. Over the past weeks, what had begun as a marriage of convenience had deepened into something real and precious. Cole was everything Edward was not: kind, patient, supportive. His love for Eliza was evident in everything from the wooden toys he carved for her to the way he could soothe her fussing when no one else could. And his feelings for Hannah, those had grown too, expressed in gentle touches, in thoughtful gestures, in the way he held her at night as if she were something infinitely valuable. Hannah had begun to recognize her own feelings as well, the warmth that filled her when Cole smiled at her, the sense of safety and rightness she felt in his presence, the growing desire that made their nights together increasingly passionate. Was it love? Hannah wasn't sure she could name it yet, still cautious after her experience with Edward. But it was real, and it was healing, and it was enough for now. The next morning, Cole confirmed that Edward had indeed left on the early stagecoach. "Heading east to Helena," he reported over breakfast. Deputy Miller watched him board personally. Hannah nodded, relief mingling with lingering anxiety. "Do you think he'll really come back?" "Hard to say," Cole admitted. "He seemed determined, but men like that often move on once they realize they can't get what they want easily." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Try not to worry, Hannah. We'll handle whatever comes." With Edward gone, life in Willow Creek settled into a pleasant routine. July brought intense heat and occasional thunderstorms that cooled the air briefly before the sun returned with renewed vigor. The vegetable garden thrived under Hannah's care, and she took pride in serving Cole fresh produce with their meals. Eliza grew stronger daily, learning to sit up with support and babbling constantly in her own language. Her first tooth appeared, accompanied by several nights of fussing that had Cole pacing the floor with her, while Hannah caught a few hours of much-needed sleep. "She likes the motion," Cole explained when Hannah found them in the kitchen at dawn, Eliza finally sleeping against his shoulder. "My sister's boy was the same way. Sometimes walking is the only thing that helps." Hannah's heart swelled at the sight of them, her strong, capable husband cradling her daughter with such tenderness. "You're good with her," she said softly. Cole smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. "She makes it easy. She's got a sweet nature like her mother." In August, Judge Parker finalized the adoption papers, officially making Eliza a Mackenzie. They celebrated with a small gathering at their home, inviting Mrs. Miller, the judge, and a few close friends from town. As Hannah watched Cole proudly showing off the document that named him as Eliza's father, she felt a sense of completion, of family, that she had never experienced before. That night, after their guests had gone and Eliza was sleeping soundly, Hannah and Cole sat on the porch, enjoying the cooler evening air. Fireflies danced in the yard, their intermittent lights creating a magical atmosphere. "Happy?" Cole asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Yes," Hannah replied truthfully. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again." Cole turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. "There's something I've been wanting to tell you, Hannah, something I should have said before now." Hannah's heart quickened. "What is it?" "I love you," he said simply. "I think I've loved you since the day we met. I know our marriage didn't start in the usual way, but my feelings for you are very real." Hannah reached up to touch his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming easily now that she recognized the truth of them. "You've given me and Eliza so much, not just protection and security, but a home, a family." Cole's kiss was tender, a promise sealed beneath the vast Montana sky. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted. "After losing my sister and nephew, I figured I'd live out my days alone, just doing my job, getting by. You changed everything, Hannah." "We changed each other," Hannah replied softly. "You helped me believe in myself again, in my worth as a woman, as a mother." They stayed on the porch until the stars emerged, talking of the future, making plans. Cole spoke of expanding the house to add another bedroom for Eliza as she grew, perhaps building a proper front porch swing. Hannah shared her ideas for planting fruit trees in the yard, for making curtains to replace the faded ones that hung in the sitting room. Simple dreams, ordinary plans, but to Hannah, they represented everything she had once thought lost to her: stability, partnership, love. September brought the first hints of autumn, with cooler mornings and leaves beginning to turn gold at their edges. Hannah found herself increasingly tired, often napping when Eliza did in the afternoons. At first, she attributed it to the changing seasons, but as other symptoms appeared, she began to suspect the true cause. She confirmed her suspicions during a visit to Dr. Thompson, Willow Creek's elderly physician. "About 3 months along, I'd say," he pronounced after a brief examination. "Due sometime in March, if my calculations are correct." Hannah walked home in a daze, one hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. Another child, Cole's child. The thought filled her with a mixture of joy and trepidation. Eliza would be just over a year old when the new baby arrived. 2 little ones so close in age would be challenging. But the thought of giving Cole a child of his own, of expanding their family, brought a smile to her face. She decided to wait until after dinner to share the news, preparing Cole's favorite meal of roast beef and apple pie. As they sat together afterward, Eliza already asleep in her cradle, Hannah took a deep breath. "I have something to tell you," she began. Cole looked up from his coffee, his expression curious. "What is it?" "I saw Dr. Thompson today," Hannah said, suddenly nervous. "I've been feeling tired lately and, Cole, we're going to have a baby." For a moment, Cole sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Then slowly, a smile spread across his features, brighter than any Hannah had seen before. "A baby," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Our baby," Hannah nodded, relief washing over her at his obvious joy. "Due in March, the doctor thinks." Cole was around the table in an instant, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "Hannah," he murmured against her hair, "I can't believe it. A baby." "Are you happy then?" Hannah asked, though his reaction had already answered her question. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Cole replied, drawing back to look at her. "Are you feeling well? Do you need anything? Should you be resting more?" Hannah laughed at his sudden concern. "I'm fine, truly, just a little tired in the afternoons." "Then you'll rest," Cole declared firmly. "I'll hire Mrs. Peterson's daughter to help with the housework, and no more heavy laundry. Will send that out." "Cole," Hannah protested, "we don't need to change everything. Women have babies every day while continuing their normal work." "Not my wife," Cole insisted. "You'll take care as the doctor advises, and I'll make sure you have whatever help you need." His hand moved to rest gently on her abdomen. "Our child," he said wonderingly. "A little brother or sister for Eliza." The genuine awe in his voice touched Hannah deeply. She had feared, in some small corner of her heart, that Cole might compare this pregnancy to her first, might feel that Eliza was somehow less his child because he hadn't fathered her. But there was no hint of such thoughts in his face, only pure joy and anticipation. That night, as they lay together in bed, Cole held Hannah close, his hand resting protectively over the place where their child grew. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed quietly. "A wife, children, a real family. After everything with my sister, I thought perhaps I wasn't meant for it." "And now," Hannah prompted gently. "Now I can't imagine any other life," Cole replied. "You and Eliza, and now this new little one. You're everything to me, Hannah." Hannah snuggled closer, feeling completely secure in his embrace. "I love you, Cole Mackenzie." "And I love you, Hannah Mackenzie," he whispered back. "Always will." The weeks passed peacefully. Hannah's pregnancy progressed without complications, though morning sickness kept her close to home for much of October. Cole was attentive and solicitous, often bringing home small treats to tempt her appetite when nothing else appealed. Eliza continued to thrive, learning to pull herself up on furniture and cruise along its edges, babbling constantly in what sounded increasingly like attempts at real words. Her first clear data sent Cole into a state of such pride that Hannah couldn't help but laugh. "You'd think no child had ever spoken before," she teased as he told the story for the third time to Deputy Wilson. "Not my child," Cole replied unabashedly. "She's brilliant, isn't she?" As November arrived with its shorter days and cooler temperatures, preparations began for the upcoming holiday season. Hannah sewed new curtains for the sitting room while Cole built a sturdier cradle for Eliza, knowing she would soon outgrow her current one. One crisp morning, Hannah was at the general store, selecting fabric for a new dress to accommodate her growing figure, when Mrs. Peterson approached with an unusually serious expression. "Hannah, dear," she said quietly, "I thought you should know. Edward Blackburn is back in town. Arrived on yesterday's stagecoach." Hannah's hand froze on the bolt of blue calico she'd been examining. "Are you certain?" Mrs. Peterson nodded grimly. "Saw him myself, checking into the hotel. He was asking Frederick about you and the marshal, how you were getting on, whether you were still in town." "What did your husband tell him?" Hannah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "That it wasn't his business," Mrs. Peterson replied with satisfaction. Frederick may gossip with the best of them, but he knows when to keep quiet. Hannah thanked her for the warning and finished her shopping quickly, eager to return home. She considered stopping at the marshal's office to tell Cole, but decided against it. He would likely already know of Edward's return, and she didn't want to appear frightened. Besides, she reasoned as she walked briskly toward home, what could Edward do now? The divorce was final, her marriage to Cole legally binding. Eliza was officially Cole's daughter through adoption. Edward had no claim on either of them. Still, the knowledge that he was back in Willow Creek unsettled her. Why return? What did he hope to accomplish? Hannah was hanging her new fabric in the wardrobe when she heard the front door open and close. Cole's footsteps sounded in the hallway, too early for his usual return home for lunch. "Hannah," he called, his voice tense. "In the bedroom," she replied, closing the wardrobe door. Cole appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "You've heard about Edward?" "Yes, Mrs. Peterson told me." Hannah sat on the edge of the bed. "What do you think he wants?" Cole removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Hannah had come to recognize as a sign of frustration. "Nothing good. He's been drinking at the saloon, making wild claims about how you were stolen from him, how the divorce wasn't legal because he didn't agree to it." "But that's nonsense," Hannah protested. "Judge Parker granted the divorce based on abandonment and cruelty. Edward's consent wasn't required." "I know that, and anyone with sense knows it too," Cole agreed. "But Blackburn's stirring up trouble, trying to get sympathy from anyone who'll listen. He's claiming I used my position as marshal to influence the judge." Hannah felt a chill of apprehension. "Do you think anyone believes him?" "Most folks know better," Cole assured her. "But there are always a few who enjoy drama, who might side with him just to be contrary." He sat beside her, taking her hand. "I'm more concerned about what he might do when the drinking and talking don't get him what he wants." "You think he might try something direct?" Hannah asked, her free hand moving instinctively to her stomach. Cole noticed the gesture and covered her hand with his own. "I don't know. But I want you to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone for now. If you need to leave the house, send word and I'll come escort you or send one of my deputies." Hannah nodded, appreciating his concern but determined not to let fear rule her. "I won't hide away, Cole. This is my home, my town. I won't let Edward drive me into seclusion." Cole smiled faintly. "I know better than to suggest it. You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Hannah Mackenzie. Just promise me you'll be cautious." "I promise," Hannah agreed, leaning against his solid warmth. "Where's Eliza?" "Mrs. Miller has her," Cole replied. "I stopped by the boarding house on my way here. Thought it might be better if she stays there this afternoon, just until we see what Blackburn is up to." Hannah nodded, grateful for his foresight. "I'll go fetch her before dinner." "I'll come with you," Cole said firmly. "In the meantime, I'm staying here. Deputized Wilson to handle things at the office for the rest of the day." They spent the afternoon together. Cole working on a rocking horse he was building for Eliza's first birthday, while Hannah finished hemming the new curtains. The normality of their activities helped calm Hannah's nerves, though she found herself glancing frequently at the window, half expecting to see Edward lurking in the yard. As the day waned and shadows lengthened, Cole set aside his work. "Time to fetch Eliza," he announced, reaching for his hat and gun belt. They walked arm in arm to the boarding house, the streets of Willow Creek quiet in the late afternoon lull. Mrs. Miller greeted them warmly, reporting that Eliza had been an absolute angel and had enjoyed helping knead dough for the evening's bread. "She's got a real talent for making a mess," the older woman chuckled, handing over a flour-dusted Eliza, who reached immediately for Cole with a happy Dada. "Takes after her mother in the kitchen then," Cole teased, earning a playful swat from Hannah. They were halfway home, Eliza babbling cheerfully in Cole's arms when Hannah spotted Edward across the street, watching them with unconcealed hostility. Cole noticed him too, his arm tightening around Hannah's waist. "Keep walking," he murmured. "Don't engage." But Edward had other ideas. He crossed the street deliberately, planting himself in their path. "Playing happy families, I see," he said, his voice slurring slightly. "How touching." "Step aside, Blackburn," Cole said evenly. "You're violating the protection order." Edward ignored him, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Hannah. "You look different," he observed. "Fuller, don't tell me you're breeding already," he laughed harshly. "Didn't waste any time, did you?" Hannah felt Cole tense beside her. "That's enough," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Move along or I'll have you in a cell." "On what charge?" Edward challenged. "Speaking to my former wife in a public street. I know my rights, Marshal." "Your rights don't include harassment," Cole replied. "Now move aside." For a tense moment, Hannah thought Edward might refuse. His gaze moved to Eliza, who was watching him curiously from the security of Cole's arms. Something flickered in Edward's expression: regret, envy. Hannah couldn't be sure. Finally, he stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. "By all means, continue your stroll." "We'll speak another time, Hannah, when your watchdog isn't hovering." "There's nothing to discuss, Edward," Hannah said firmly. "Please accept that and move on with your life." Edward's face hardened. "We'll see about that." They continued home without further incident, but Hannah could feel Cole's tension in the rigid set of his shoulders. Once they were inside with the door locked behind them, he handed Eliza to Hannah and paced the sitting room, his expression thunderous. "The nerve of that man," he muttered. "Commenting on your condition, threatening to speak with you alone. I should have arrested him on the spot and given him exactly the confrontation he wanted," Hannah countered gently. "You did the right thing, Cole. He's trying to provoke you to make you look unreasonable." Cole sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, but when he looked at you that way when he mentioned the baby." He shook his head. "I wanted to knock him to the ground." Hannah set Eliza down on her play blanket and went to her husband, placing her hands on his chest. "That's exactly what he wants. To make you lose control, to create a scene. Don't give him the satisfaction." Cole covered her hands with his own. "When did you get so wise, Mrs. Mackenzie?" "I've had an excellent teacher in patience these past months," Hannah replied with a small smile. "A certain Marshal who showed me that strength isn't about displays of power, but about doing what's right, even when it's difficult." Cole's expression softened, and he pulled her gently into his arms, careful of her slightly rounded belly. "I love you, Hannah. You and our children, you're everything to me. I'd do anything to keep you safe." "I know," Hannah murmured against his chest, "and we love you too." That night after dinner, Cole insisted on checking every window and door twice before they retired. He placed his revolver on the bedside table, something he rarely did at home, and Hannah knew he expected trouble. "You really think he might try something tonight?" she asked as they prepared for bed. Cole sighed. "Probably not. But I'd rather be overprepared than caught by surprise." They settled into bed, Eliza sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby. Despite her exhaustion, Hannah found sleep elusive, her mind racing with worry. Beside her, Cole lay awake as well, his breathing too measured for slumber. "Cole," she whispered in the darkness. What if he never gives up? What if we're always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for him to appear?" Cole turned toward her, gathering her close. "He will give up eventually. Men like Blackburn don't have the stamina for long campaigns. They want immediate results, and when they don't get them, they move on to easier targets." "I hope you're right," Hannah murmured. "Trust me," Cole replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. And even if I'm wrong, even if he persists, we'll handle it. Together." Hannah nodded against his chest, drawing comfort from his steadiness. Whatever came, they would face it as a family. That thought finally allowed her to drift into sleep, secure in her husband's embrace. The next morning, Cole reluctantly returned to his duties at the marshal's office, leaving Deputy Wilson to keep an eye on the house. Hannah went about her usual routine, refusing to let Edward's presence in town disrupt her life more than necessary. She baked bread, played with Eliza, and worked on a small quilt she was making for the new baby. In the afternoon, Mrs. Miller stopped by with a basket of preserves and the latest town gossip. "Edward Blackburn made quite a spectacle of himself at the saloon last night," she reported as they sat at the kitchen table, watching Eliza stack wooden blocks. "Started a fight with Fred Johnson over some perceived slight. Marshal had to lock him up to cool off." Hannah looked up in surprise. "Cole didn't mention that. Probably didn't want to worry you," Mrs. Miller said shrewdly. "He let Blackburn out this morning with a warning. That man is trouble, Hannah, pure trouble." "I know," Hannah sighed. "I just wish he'd leave town and let us be." "He will eventually," Mrs. Miller assured her. "Men like that can't sustain their rage forever. Something else will catch their attention and they move on." Hannah hoped she was right, but something in Edward's expression yesterday had suggested a more determined purpose than mere spite. Her concerns proved justified that very evening. Cole had just returned home, and they were sitting down to dinner when a rock crashed through the sitting room window, sending glass shards scattering across the floor. Cole was on his feet instantly, gun drawn. "Stay here with Eliza," he ordered, moving cautiously toward the broken window. Hannah gathered Eliza from her high chair, the little girl whimpering in confusion at the sudden commotion. "Cole, be careful," she pleaded. He nodded grimly, then peered carefully around the window frame. The street outside appeared empty in the gathering dusk. Attached to the rock was a piece of paper secured with twine. Cole retrieved it cautiously and unfolded the note. His expression darkened as he read. "What does it say?" Hannah asked, dreading the answer. Cole hesitated, then handed her the paper. The message was brief and chilling. "A man who steals another man's wife deserves to lose everything he loves. Watch your back, Marshal." "Edward?" Hannah whispered, though the answer was obvious. Cole nodded. "His handwriting matches the telegram he sent you last year." He moved to the door. "Stay here. Lock this behind me. I'm going to find him." "Cole, no," Hannah protested. "It could be a trap. He wants to lure you out." "Then he'll get what he wants," Cole replied grimly. "I won't have him threatening my family." Before Hannah could argue further, Cole was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. She hurried to lock it, then retreated to the kitchen, away from the broken window. Eliza, sensing her mother's distress, began to cry in earnest. "SHH, sweetheart," Hannah soothed, bouncing her gently. "Everything's all right. Daddy will be back soon." But as minutes stretched into an hour with no sign of Cole's return, Hannah's anxiety grew. Had Edward ambushed him? Should she send for help? She was debating whether to risk going to a neighbor's house when she heard footsteps on the porch, followed by Cole's voice. "Hannah, it's me. Open up." Relief flooded through her as she hurried to unlock the door. Cole entered, his expression grim but determined. Behind him came Judge Parker and Deputy Wilson, both looking equally serious. "What's happened?" Hannah asked, searching Cole's face for clues. "Did you find Edward?" "Not yet," Cole replied, removing his hat. "But we will." "Judge Parker is issuing a warrant for his arrest based on the threat and destruction of property." The judge nodded solemnly. "Threatening a peace officer is a serious offense, Mrs. Mackenzie. We'll find Mr. Blackburn and ensure he faces consequences for his actions." "In the meantime," Cole added, I want you and Eliza to stay at Mrs. Miller's boarding house tonight. It's more secure, and there will be other people around. Hannah wanted to protest, to insist they stay in their own home, but the memory of the rock crashing through their window so close to where Eliza had been playing earlier stopped her. "All right," she agreed. "When will you join us?" "I won't be," Cole said grimly. "I'm staying here. If Blackburn returns, I want him to find me waiting, not an empty house." "Cole, no," Hannah protested. "That's exactly what he wants, to get you alone." "I won't be alone," Cole assured her, nodding toward Deputy Wilson. "Tom will be with me, and we'll have men watching the streets. If Blackburn shows his face anywhere near this house, we'll know." Hannah could see the determination in his eyes and knew arguing would be futile. "Promise me you'll be careful," she said instead, reaching up to touch his face. "I need you to come back to us." Cole covered her hand with his own. "Always," he promised. Within the hour, Hannah and Eliza were settled in Mrs. Miller's most comfortable guest room, the same one Hannah had occupied during her first weeks in Willow Creek. The older woman fussed over them, bringing extra blankets and a cup of chamomile tea to settle your nerves. "The Marshal knows what he's doing," she assured Hannah as they sat together in the small parlor, Eliza already asleep upstairs. "He was a Union scout during the war, you know. Learned to track and anticipate enemy movements. If anyone can handle Edward Blackburn, it's Cole Mackenzie." Hannah nodded, though worry still gnawed at her. "I just wish none of this was necessary, that Edward had accepted the divorce and moved on." "Some men can't accept defeat," Mrs. Miller said wisely. "They'd rather destroy what they can't possess than see it happy with someone else." She patted Hannah's hand. "But Cole won't let that happen. That man loves you and Eliza something fierce. And the new baby," Hannah added softly, her hand resting on her growing belly. Mrs. Miller smiled. "That too. Now try to get some rest. Tomorrow will sort itself out." But sleep proved elusive for Hannah that night. She lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to Eliza's soft breathing and wondering what was happening at her home. Was Cole safe? Had Edward returned? Each creak of the old boarding house made her start, imagining footsteps on the stairs or at the door. Dawn was just breaking when a knock came at the bedroom door. Hannah was instantly alert, heart pounding. "Who is it?" she called softly, trying not to wake Eliza. "It's me," Cole's voice replied, and Hannah rushed to open the door. He stood there looking exhausted but triumphant. "We got him," he said without preamble. "Caught him trying to sneak into our house around midnight." "Thank God," Hannah breathed, pulling him into the room and closing the door. "Is he in jail?" Cole nodded, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. "And he'll stay there until the circuit court convenes next month. Judge Parker has charged him with threatening a peace officer, destruction of property, and violation of a protection order." "Will that be enough to keep him away for good?" Hannah asked, hope mingling with lingering concern. "It should be," Cole replied. "The judge is recommending he serve his sentence in the territorial prison in Deer Lodge, not our local jail. That's at least a year away from Willow Creek." Hannah sank onto the bed in relief. "A year. And after that, there will be conditions to his release," Cole continued, sitting beside her. "One of which will be that he stay at least 50 miles from Willow Creek. Judge Parker was very thorough." Hannah leaned against his shoulder, suddenly exhausted now that the immediate danger had passed. "It's really over then, as over as it can be," Cole confirmed, wrapping an arm around her. "Blackburn won't trouble us again, Hannah, I promise." Eliza stirred in her makeshift bed, blinking sleepily at them before breaking into a wide smile at the sight of Cole. "Dada!" she exclaimed, holding up her arms to be lifted. Cole complied, settling her on his lap where she immediately began playing with the buttons on his vest. "Did you miss me, little one?" he asked softly. I missed you." Hannah watched them together, her heart full. Despite Edward's best efforts, they were still a family, still together, still whole. "Can we go home now?" she asked. Cole nodded. "I've already had the window repaired and everything put back in order. Home is waiting whenever you're ready." An hour later, after thanking Mrs. Miller for her hospitality, they walked together through the quiet streets of Willow Creek. The town was just beginning to stir, shopkeepers opening their doors, women sweeping their front steps. Several people called greetings, news of Edward's arrest having already spread. Their house looked the same as always, the new window blending seamlessly with the old. Inside, everything was neat and orderly, no sign remaining of the previous night's disturbance. "Home," Hannah sighed, setting Eliza down to toddle across the familiar floor. Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands coming to rest on her growing belly. "Home," he agreed. Safe and sound. In that moment, with the morning sun streaming through the windows and her family around her, Hannah finally believed it was true. The shadow Edward had cast over their lives was lifting, allowing light to shine through once more. The following weeks passed peacefully. Edward remained in jail awaiting trial, and life in Willow Creek returned to its normal rhythms. Hannah continued her preparations for the new baby, sewing tiny garments and planning how to rearrange their home to accommodate another child. Cole completed the rocking horse for Eliza's upcoming first birthday, a beautifully crafted toy that Hannah knew her daughter would cherish for years to come. He also began work on a proper crib for the new baby, determined that this child would have a bed of its own from the beginning. In early December, with the first snow dusting the ground, Judge Parker convened court. Edward's trial was brief but thorough. Hannah testified about his threats and the rock thrown through their window, her testimony supported by Cole, Deputy Wilson, and Judge Parker himself, who had witnessed the threatening note. Edward maintained his innocence, claiming he was being framed by a jealous husband and corrupt officials, but his prior behavior and the evidence against him were too substantial to ignore. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in the territorial prison, with the condition that upon release, he remain at least 50 miles from Willow Creek for a period of 5 years. As Edward was led away in handcuffs, he looked back once at Hannah, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been regret. Hannah met his gaze steadily, feeling not triumph but a quiet relief that this chapter of her life was truly closing. Outside the courthouse, Cole wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "It's done," he said simply. "He can't hurt us anymore." Hannah nodded, breathing deeply of the crisp winter air. "Let's go home," she suggested. "Mrs. Miller will be wondering how it went and Eliza will be ready for her nap." As they walked through town, Hannah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. Just 8 months ago, she had stood alone with Eliza outside the stagecoach station, rejected and afraid, with no clear path forward. Now she was Mrs. Hannah Mackenzie, respected wife of the town marshal, mother to Eliza and soon to another child, with a home and community that valued her. Edward had meant to destroy her by sending her away, but in doing so, he had inadvertently given her the greatest gift, the chance to find her true place in the world with a man who loved her for exactly who she was. Christmas that year was a joyous affair. Cole surprised Hannah by inviting Mrs. Miller to join them for dinner, refusing to let the older woman spend the holiday alone. They exchanged simple gifts, a new shawl for Mrs. Miller, handcrafted toys for Eliza, a finely tooled leather journal for Cole, and for Hannah, a delicate silver locket containing a tiny portrait of Eliza that Cole had commissioned from a traveling artist months earlier. "It's beautiful," Hannah whispered, tears in her eyes as she fastened it around her neck. "Thank you." "Room for another portrait on the other side," Cole pointed out with a smile, his hand gentle on her rounded belly. "When the little one arrives." Eliza's first birthday in January was celebrated with equal enthusiasm. Hannah baked a small cake, and Cole presented the rocking horse to a delighted Eliza, who immediately tried to climb aboard, requiring her father's steady hands to keep her balanced. "She's fearless," Cole chuckled as Eliza demanded more, after each gentle rock. "Like her father," Hannah observed with a smile. As February arrived with its bitter cold and swirling snow, Hannah's pregnancy entered its final weeks. Her movements slowed, and she found herself grateful for Cole's insistence on hiring help with the heavier housework. Mrs. Peterson's daughter, Sarah, came 3 times a week to assist with laundry and cleaning, allowing Hannah to conserve her energy for caring for Eliza and preparing for the new baby's arrival. On a particularly cold night in late February, Hannah woke to the familiar tightening of her abdomen. She lay still, waiting to see if it would pass, but another followed 10 minutes later and then another. It was time. She woke Cole gently, smiling at his instant alertness. "The baby's coming," she said simply. Cole was out of bed in an instant, pulling on his clothes with remarkable speed for a man just roused from deep sleep. "I'll fetch Dr. Thompson," he said, already reaching for his coat, "and Mrs. Miller to stay with Eliza." "There's time," Hannah assured him, amused by his urgency. First babies usually take their time, and this one seems in no particular hurry. But Cole was not to be deterred. Within the hour, both the doctor and Mrs. Miller had arrived, the latter immediately taking charge of a still sleeping Eliza while Dr. Thompson examined Hannah. "Coming along nicely," he pronounced with professional calm. "But as your wife suggested, Marshal, we've likely got hours ahead of us. Might want to put some coffee on." The labor progressed steadily throughout the night and into the morning. Cole remained by Hannah's side, supporting her through each contraction, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement. Unlike Edward, who had been conspicuously absent during Eliza's birth, Cole seemed determined to share every moment of this experience, however difficult. As dawn broke over Willow Creek, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold, Hannah gave a final push, and their son entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to Cole's eyes. "A boy," Dr. Thompson announced, placing the squalling infant on Hannah's chest. "A fine, healthy boy." Hannah gazed down at her son, marveling at his perfect tiny features, the shock of dark hair so like his father's. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Cole sat beside her on the bed, one arm around her shoulders, the other hand gently touching his son's head. "He's perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Hannah, he's perfect." "What shall we call him?" Hannah asked, though they had discussed names often in recent months. Cole smiled, his eyes never leaving his son's face. "James," he said. "James Thomas Mackenzie, after my father and brother." "James," Hannah repeated, testing the name. "I think it suits him." Later that morning, Mrs. Miller brought Eliza in to meet her new brother. The little girl regarded the baby with solemn curiosity, then reached out a cautious finger to touch his cheek. "Baby," she pronounced carefully, looking to her parents for confirmation. "That's right, sweetheart," Cole said, lifting her onto the bed beside Hannah. "This is your brother, James. You're a big sister now." Eliza seemed to consider this new information, then leaned forward to place a somewhat wet kiss on the baby's forehead. "My baby," she declared, causing the adults to laugh. "She's got the right idea," Cole observed. "He is ours, all of ours." As Hannah looked at her family gathered on the bed, Cole strong and protective, Eliza curious and loving, Baby James peaceful in her arms, she felt a sense of completion, of rightness, that she had never expected to find after Edward's rejection. The stagecoach that had returned her to Willow Creek with her child in arms had seemed like an ending at the time, the closing of a door on her hopes for family and belonging. Instead, it had been a beginning, the first step on a journey that had led her here, to this moment, surrounded by love. Cole met her eyes over Eliza's head, and the devotion she saw there filled her heart to overflowing. "I love you," he mouthed silently. "I love you too," Hannah whispered back. "Always." Spring arrived early that year, melting the snow and bringing new growth to the land. By April, Hannah was fully recovered from James's birth and enjoying the rhythm of life with 2 children. Eliza had adapted well to her role as big sister, often bringing her favorite toys to share with the baby, though he was still too young to appreciate the gesture. Cole had taken to fatherhood with natural ease, as comfortable cradling newborn James as he was playing with energetic Eliza. The sight of her strong, capable husband tenderly rocking their son to sleep, or patiently teaching Eliza to stack blocks, never failed to warm Hannah's heart. On a particularly fine day in late April, with wildflowers blooming in the meadows and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of new growth, the Mackenzie family picnicked on the banks of Willow Creek, the small stream that had given the town its name. Cole had found a perfect spot beneath a cottonwood tree, spreading a blanket for Hannah to sit with baby James while he and Eliza explored the shallows, looking for interesting pebbles and the occasional tadpole. Hannah watched them together, Eliza's delighted laughter carrying on the breeze as Cole showed her how to skip stones across the water's surface. James slept peacefully in her lap, his tiny face relaxed in the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves above. In that moment, Hannah felt a contentment so deep it brought tears to her eyes. This was what family should be, not the control and fear she had known with Edward, but this. Love freely given and received, respect, partnership, joy shared and sorrows halved. Cole looked up, catching her watching them. He smiled, that full, unreserved smile that had once been so rare but now appeared regularly, and beckoned her to join them at the water's edge. Hannah gathered James in her arms and walked toward them, toward her husband and daughter, toward the future they would build together. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked as she reached them, his arm slipping naturally around her waist. Hannah leaned into his embrace, watching as Eliza crouched to examine a particularly interesting stone. "I was thinking about that day at the stagecoach station," she admitted. "How lost I felt, how afraid, and now look at us." Cole tightened his arm around her. "Best day of my life, finding you standing there. Even though I came with complications," Hannah teased gently, nodding toward Eliza. "Especially because of that," Cole replied seriously. "Eliza led me to you, and both of you saved me from a life of solitude I didn't even realize I was dreading." He glanced down at James, sleeping peacefully against Hannah's shoulder. "And now we have him too, our family." "Our forever," Hannah whispered, the words feeling right, feeling true. Cole bent to kiss her, his lips gentle against hers. "Our forever," he agreed. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the Mackenzie family gathered their things and started for home. Eliza skipped ahead, pockets full of treasured stones, while Cole carried James, now awake and observing the world with solemn dark eyes. Hannah walked beside her husband, her hand in his, grateful beyond words for the journey that had brought them together. What had begun as desperation, a bride returned with her child in arms, nowhere to go and no one to turn to, had transformed into something beautiful and enduring. A family bound not by obligation or convention, but by the strongest tie of all, love freely given, freely chosen, every single day. And as they reached their home, lamps already glowing warmly in the windows against the gathering dusk, Hannah knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged. With Cole, with their children, in this place they had made together, forever.